Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive on dating.
Oh, dating.
One of those things that can be
Yeah,
a real roller coaster,
totally.
no matter what your age is. But get this,
Okay.
it actually changes a L or T between your 20s and your 30s.
Really?
Like, seriously.
Wow.
We're going way deeper today.
Deeper.
We've got all this research and insights that compare and contrast those 2 decades in dating.
Okay, I'm ready.
It's like a behind-the-scenes look at how the whole game evolves as you get older.
Oh, okay, so it's not just about the actual, dating apps or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like the whole
The whole mindset.
mindset changes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like the rules change without anyone telling you.
You're right.
But it's fascinating because it's about you changing too.
I like that.
Okay, so let's start with the decade that's all about self-discovery. Your 20s.
Oh, yeah.
I remember those days. Like, so much experimentation, not just with relationships, but with pretty much everything.
Totally. You're figuring out who you are, your values, your
Yeah.
career path, what you want your life to look like. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, you're building the foundation for the person you're going to become.
Right.
So it makes sense that relationships in your 20s might feel a little less stable,
Oh, for sure.
still figuring things out,
Yeah.
both personally and in terms of what you want in a partner.
Yeah, I think...
Oh, and one of the sources even use the phrase like relationship churn to describe this period.
Churn. I like that word.
Right.
It's not always about avoiding commitment altogether.
Right.
It's more like prioritizing self-growth, even if that means the relationships end up being shorter or less defined.
Yeah, and I've definitely seen that play out with friends, like the whole FOMO thing.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not just about missing out on experiences.
It's about missing out on,
on the right relationship.
the right relationship.
Yeah, if you settle down too early.
Interesting.
And the research backs that up.
Really?
Yeah, during the 20s, people tend to prioritize exploring different relationship styles, figuring out what truly resonates with them before making any long-term commitments.
It makes sense, right? You're gathering all this information about relationships.
Yeah, it's like you're building up your relationship resume.
Right.
Okay.
So let's fast forward a decade
Okay, fast forward.
into the 30s.
Right.
Our sources seem to agree this is when things start to shift toward more intentionality in dating.
Intentionality. Okay.
That shift is interesting because it aligns with another stage of personal development.
So we're still changing.
Oh, we're always changing.
Okay.
But by the time you hit your 30s, you've got more life experience under your belt.
More experience, all right?
You've probably gone through some ups and downs in your 20s, maybe even some breakups.
Right, breakups.
And all of that helps you refine your understanding of yourself and what you're truly looking for in a partner.
So it's like all those failed relationships actually become valuable lessons.
Totally. They help you create a clearer picture of what you want and don't want in a relationship.
You're getting more clarity.
One of the sources even called this the clarity phase of dating. That makes sense. Clarity phase. I like that.
Did you find that to be true in your own life?
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't like a sudden aha moment, though. For me, it was more like a gradual accumulation of self-knowledge.
Yeah.
All those past experiences, both good and bad, kind of coalesced into a deeper understanding of my own needs and desires. And that newfound clarity definitely influenced how I approached dating in my 30s.
That's so interesting. And our sources point out that this newfound clarity often leads to a pretty significant shift in how people communicate while dating in their 30s.
Oh, communication. So it's not just what we're thinking, it's how we're talking about it.
Exactly. Instead of all the guessing games and mixed signals,
Oh, I hate
there's a
those.
move towards more direct and honest conversations.
Oh, thank goodness for that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like the dating language itself
Oh.
evolves.
That's a good way to put it. It
Paul,
evolves.
in your 20s, it might be all about subtle hints,
Trying to figure out...
deciphering someone's intentions.
Exactly.
But in your 30s, there's this unspoken agreement that everyone's time is precious,
Yes.
and it's better to be upfront about what you're looking for.
I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another fascinating point from our sources.
Okay.
This idea that the actual goals of dating change between these 2 decades.
Okay, so it's not just about the communication style.
No, it's like the
It's
whole...
the purpose.
The purpose.
Yeah.
It's like in your 20s, it's more about exploration, trying different things.
Yeah.
Maybe even just having fun and enjoying the ride.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely not.
But as you transition into your 30s, something interesting happens.
What's that?
The focus often shifts towards finding a partner who's not just compatible in the moment,
Uh-huh.
but someone you can actually build a future with.
Ooh, that's a good distinction.
Yeah.
It's like you're not just looking for a date for Saturday night anymore.
Right.
You're looking for someone who aligns with your long-term goals,
Long-term goals.
whether that's marriage, starting a family, or just building a life together.
Totally different mindset.
It's a totally different
Yeah,
mindset.
right.
It's fascinating how much things change
Yeah, it really is
just
fascinating.
within that decade
Yeah.
of life.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, I guess we keep developing, right?
Exactly, and dating kind of reflects that.
I like that.
So are you ready to jump into some of the details about dating in your 30s?
Oh, I am so ready. Let's go.
Right, let's do it.
All right. Yeah, and one of our sources actually had some data on this. They found that while only about 15% of people in their early 20s were actively seeking a long-term partner, that number jumped to almost 60% by the time they reached their mid-30s.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
It is.
So it's not just anecdotal.
No,
It's actually backed up by research.
by research.
But hold on, before we get too deep into the 30s, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
The whole relationship resume idea. It makes me wonder, is there a point where all that experience from your 20s can actually start to work against you when you're dating in your 30s?
That's a great question. It's like a double-edged sword, right?
Okay.
On the one hand, all those past relationships have given you valuable insights into what you do and don't want.
Right.
But on the other hand, it can also lead to some baggage, both emotional and practical.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit.
Okay.
What kind of baggage are we talking about here?
Well, on the emotional side, it could be anything from lingering insecurities to a fear of getting hurt again. You might find yourself comparing new partners to past ones, or even projecting old patterns onto new relationships. And those things can definitely sabotage your chances of finding a healthy, lasting connection.
That makes sense. It's like your past experiences can create these mental filters that influence how you see and interact with potential partners.
Yeah, it's like you're carrying around all those old stories in your head.
And you mentioned practical baggage, too.
Oh, right.
What did you mean by that?
Practically speaking, it could be things like financial entanglements from previous relationships, co-parenting agreements, or even just the logistical complexities of blending families if you have kids from a previous marriage. These are all very real challenges that people dating in their 30s often have to navigate.
It's almost like the stakes are higher in a way.
Yeah, the stakes are definitely higher.
It's not just about two individuals figuring things out.
Right.
It's about potentially merging lives and families.
Which adds a whole other layer of complexity.
A whole other layer.
But
Yeah.
even with all that baggage and complexity, dating in your 30s also comes with some amazing advantages.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Yeah.
What are these advantages we get to look forward to?
Well, remember that clarity we talked about?
Yes.
It's not just about knowing what you want.
Okay.
It's also about having the confidence to go after it.
So you're saying people in their 30s are more likely to be assertive and proactive in their dating lives.
Exactly. They're not afraid to put themselves out there, to initiate conversations, to clearly articulate their needs and expectations.
I love that. It's like you're taking control of the process
Yeah.
instead of just waiting for things to happen.
Right. You're in the driver's seat.
And that confidence probably plays a big role in attracting the right kind of partner too, right?
Absolutely. When you know what you want and you're not afraid to express it, you naturally attract people who are on the same wavelength. And that brings us to another key advantage of dating in your 30s. You're more likely to attract partners who are also looking for something serious and long-lasting.
It's like you're filtering out a lot of the noise and focusing on people who are truly compatible with your goals and values.
Exactly. And that shared intentionality can be incredibly powerful. It creates a foundation of mutual respect and understanding, which can lead to deeper, more fulfilling connections.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges and the advantages of dating in your 30s. But I'm curious, how does all of this play out in terms of the actual dating experience? What are some of the key differences between dating in your 20s versus your 30s?
Well, one of the most noticeable differences is the pace of relationships.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that.
In your 20s, things tend to move much faster. There's this sense of urgency, a desire to jump into things head first. But in your 30s, there's often a more measured approach. People are more likely to take their time to get to know each other on a deeper level before making any major commitments.
And that probably has a lot to do with the fact that, like we were saying earlier, people in their 30s are often looking for something more than just a casual fling.
Precisely. And this slower pace can actually be a really good thing. It allows you to build a stronger foundation for the relationship to develop trust and intimacy at a healthier rate.
It's like you're less likely to get swept up in the initial excitement and more focused on creating something sustainable.
Exactly. And this shift in pace is reflected in the way people approach dating itself. In your 20s, it might be all about going out to bars and clubs, meeting people through friends, maybe even some spontaneous
Right,
hookups.
it's all about exploring and seeing what's out there.
But in your 30s, there's often a more deliberate approach to dating. People are more likely to utilize online dating apps to set up intentional dates and to have more meaningful conversations early on.
So it's less about chance encounters and more about being proactive and seeking out compatible partners.
Yeah, you're being more intentional about who you spend your time with.
Our sources actually mentioned a study that found that people in their 30s were significantly more likely to use online dating apps than people in their 20s.
That makes sense, doesn't it? In your 30s, you're often juggling a lot more responsibilities, work, family, maybe even some side hustles. So online dating offers a more efficient and convenient way to meet potential partners.
It's like you're optimizing your dating life for efficiency, just like you might optimize your work schedule or your grocery shopping.
Exactly. It's
Mhm.
all about working smarter, not harder.
And speaking of optimization, one of the sources had a really interesting point about how the way people evaluate potential partners changes between their 20s and 30s.
Oh, I'm curious to hear about that. What did they say?
Well, they basically said that in your 20s, you might be more focused on superficial qualities, looks,
Oh,
social status, maybe even shared interests.
right. It's like you're still figuring out what's important to you.
Exactly. But as you enter your 30s, you start to prioritize deeper qualities, things like shared values, emotional intelligence, communication styles, and even financial compatibility.
It's like you're looking beyond the surface and really trying to assess whether this person is someone you can build a life with, not just someone to have fun with for a few months.
That's such a great point. And it makes me think about another key difference between dating in your 20s and 30s, the role of societal expectations.
Oh, definitely. That's a big one.
It's like once you hit your 30s, there's this added pressure to settle down, get married, have kids, and basically tick all those boxes on the socially acceptable timeline.
Right? Society starts sending you all these messages about what you should be doing.
And that pressure can really influence your dating choices,
Right.
right?
Absolutely. In your 20s, you might feel more free to experiment, to date casually, to even reject those traditional relationship norms. But in your 30s, those societal expectations can start to feel a lot heavier. You might find yourself questioning your choices, wondering if you're on track with everyone else.
And that can lead to some pretty unhealthy dating patterns.
Oh, for sure. Like settling for someone who's good enough on paper but doesn't actually fulfill you on a deeper level.
Exactly. Or rushing into a relationship because you feel like you're running out of time. Or even feeling like a failure because you haven't found the one by a certain age.
It's so important to remember that everyone's journey is different. There's no one-size-fits-all timeline for love and relationships.
Absolutely. One of the most empowering things you can do, no matter what age you are, is to define your own definition of success when it comes to dating and relationships.
I love that. Define your own success. Don't let societal pressure dictate your choices. Yeah.
Exactly. Listen to your own heart, your own intuition.
And remember, even though we're talking about these 2 decades as distinct categories, the reality is that everyone's experience is unique. There's no magic switch that flips when you turn 30. It's a gradual evolution, and everyone moves through it at their own pace.
All right, so before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to bring it back to our listener. We've talked about all these fascinating differences between dating in your 20s and 30s, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What resonates with you?
Yeah, what stands out to you? Have you noticed these shifts in your own dating experiences?
Or maybe you've observed these patterns in the lives of your friends or family members.
We'd love to hear your perspective. After all, this depth dive is all about helping you make sense of this complex world of dating and relationships.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground already. From that thrill of exploration in your 20s to the shift towards more intentionality in your 30s. And let's be real, dating can be a bit of a jungle,
Oh, it really
no
can.
matter what decade you're in.
Definitely.
Going through all this research,
Yeah.
it really highlighted one key takeaway for me.
Oh, I'm curious. What's that?
It's that dating is ultimately a journey of self-discovery. It's about learning about yourself, what you want and need in a partner,
Right.
and how to navigate relationships in a way that feels authentic and fulfilling.
I love that. It's not just about finding the one.
Right.
It's about becoming the best version of yourself along the way.
Exactly. And our sources actually had some really practical tips on how to navigate this journey with more awareness and intentionality.
Oh, okay. I like that.
So let's dive into those tips.
Okay. Let's do it.
What's the first one?
Well, it might sound obvious, but one of the most important things you can do no matter what age you are is to prioritize self-care.
Self-care. I love that.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in the excitement of dating or even the disappointment of rejection that we forget to take care of
It
ourselves.
happens to the best of us.
But when you're feeling depleted,
Yeah,
it's so much harder to show up as your best self in dating and relationship.
that's so true.
So what are some practical ways we can make sure we're prioritizing self-care during this whole dating process?
Well, it can be as simple as making time for activities that bring you joy,
Oh, yeah.
whether that's reading, exercising, spending time in nature, or just catching up with friends.
All the good stuff.
Exactly. It's also about setting healthy boundaries, both with potential partners and with yourself.
Boundaries.
Yes.
Yes, I think that's especially important in your 20s when you might be more prone to people-pleasing or feeling pressured to say yes to things you're not really comfortable with.
Absolutely. Learning to say no is such an important part of self-care and self-respect. And it also helps you filter out the wrong partners because anyone who's truly right for you will respect your boundaries.
Speaking of filtering out the wrong partners, one of the sources had a really interesting point about red flags. They basically said that the types of red flags you should be looking out for actually change as you get older.
Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't think about that.
So in your 20s, the red flags might be more obvious things like inconsistency, lack of communication, or even just bad manners.
Right. It's like you're still learning to recognize those basic signs of disrespect or incompatibility.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But as you move into your 30s, the red flags become more nuanced.
Nuance, okay.
It's less about surface level behaviors and more about deeper patterns and values.
So what kind of red flags should we be looking out for in our 30s?
The source mentioned things like emotional unavailability, unwillingness to compromise, or even misaligned life goals.
Yeah, that makes sense. In your 30s, you're not just looking for someone to go on dates with. You're looking for a partner, a teammate, someone who's going to be there for you through the ups and downs of life.
And if you're not on the same page about those bigger things,
Yeah,
it's going to create conflict and resentment down the line.
absolutely. It's like those deeper incompatibilities become deal breakers when you're thinking about building a future with someone.
And that's why it's so important to have those honest and vulnerable conversations early on in the dating process.
Oh, for sure. Don't be afraid to ask those tough questions, even if it feels a little awkward.
Yeah, it's better to address potential issues up front than to ignore them and hope they magically disappear.
I agree. And, this brings us back to that whole idea of communication being key.
Yeah.
One of the sources actually offered a really helpful tip on how to have those more meaningful conversations while dating. They called it the values check-in.
Values check-in. Okay,
Wow.
I like it. Tell me more.
It's basically a dedicated conversation where you and your potential partner each share your top 3 non-negotiable values. It could be anything from honesty and integrity to family and personal growth.
It's a way to quickly assess whether your core values are aligned.
Exactly. It's
Yeah,
like a shortcut to figuring out if you're truly compatible on a deeper level.
I love that.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be a super serious or formal conversation.
No, not at all.
You can even frame it as a fun game.
Right.
Like, what are your top 3 things you can't live without in a relationship?
Oh, I like that.
Takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
Makes it feel more like a natural part of getting to know each other.
Exactly.
And speaking of getting to know each other, one of the sources had a really interesting observation about the role of technology in dating.
Oh, technology.
Okay. They basically said that while dating apps can be incredibly useful for meeting new people, they can also create this illusion of infinite choice.
Oh, yeah, that's so true. It's like you're constantly swiping and matching.
But it never feels like you're actually connecting with anyone on a deeper level.
Exactly. And he can lead to that grass is always greener mentality where
Yeah.
you're never fully present with the person you're actually dating because you're always wondering if there's someone better out there. Just swipe away.
So how do we navigate this paradox? How do we use technology to our advantage without letting it sabotage our chances of finding real love?
Well, one of the sources suggested setting intentional boundaries around your use of dating apps. Maybe that means only swiping for a certain amount of time each day or taking regular breaks from the apps altogether.
It's like anything else in life, moderation is key.
Exactly. And it's also about being mindful of your intentions when you're using dating apps. Are you looking for a quick distraction or a genuine connection?
If you're not clear on your own intentions, it's easy to get swept up in the endless cycle of swiping and matching without ever really investing in getting to know anyone.
And, one of the most powerful things you can do when you're feeling overwhelmed by the online dating world is to simply step away and reconnect with yourself.
Oh, I love that. It's like hitting the pause button and giving yourself permission to breathe, to reflect, to remember what's truly important to you.
Exactly. And sometimes that's all it takes to shift your perspective and attract the right kind of energy into your life.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the ever-evolving world of dating, I
Okay.
want to leave our listener with one final thought.
All right, I'm listening.
No matter what decade you're in, no matter what challenges you're facing, remember that you are worthy of love. You deserve to be with someone who sees you, values you, and cherishes you for exactly who you are.
That's beautiful. And never forget that the journey of finding love is just as much about discovering and embracing yourself as it is about finding another person.
So true. It's about honoring your own journey, your own timeline, and trusting that the right person will come along when the time is right.
And until then, enjoy the ride. Embrace the ups and downs, the lessons learned, and the growth that comes with every experience.
There's a perfect way to end this. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of dating in your 20s and 30s. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and feel empowered to navigate this journey with more awareness, intentionality, and most importantly, self-love.
And remember, no matter where you are in your dating journey, we're rooting for you.